The Wildlife Conservation Society is the world's preeminent conservation organization, saving wildlife and wild places since its founding 125 years ago. From our global headquarters at the Bronx Zoo to the most biologically critical regions on the planet, we harness the unrivaled power of our global conservation programs with our 5 New York City zoos and aquarium to lead the way on conservation science and action. Indeed, we put conservation on the map. From the first species saved from extinction to establishing the first veterinary health department at a zoo, from pioneering firsts in exploration and education, to helping create more than 250 protected areas on land and at sea. From helping pass the first international treaty protecting wildlife to inspiring the next generation of conservation leaders, we will continue to lead the way forward in an ever more urgent time of environmental crises. At WCS, we stand for wildlife and wild places. Our survival as a species depends on them. Their future depends on us. This is our history. This is our legacy. This is our mission. With an eye toward the new century, avid sportsman and future U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt foresees the loss of the nation's wildlife and rich natural heritage unless dramatic action is taken. He appoints a committee that will ask New York State to establish a zoological society in the country's most populous and prosperous city. The Wildlife Conservation Society is founded as the New York Zoological Society in 1895, with a mandate to accomplish 3 goals: advance wildlife conservation, promote the study of zoology, and create a first-class zoo. Although other zoological societies exist at the time, the New York Zoological Society is the first in the world to have conservation built directly into its DNA. On November 8, 1899, the Bronx Zoo opens to great acclaim. This unparalleled access to the planet's animals ignites a powerful spark, connecting visitors to science and nature, and the need to protect both. Science is immediately put into action as the society begins to make its mark. With the backing of the Society's leadership, the first federal law protecting wildlife is passed. A year later, the Society establishes the country's first veterinary department at a zoological park, setting a new standard for animal care. Based on the success of the Bronx Zoo, city officials asked the Society to take over management of the New York Aquarium, also a top attraction of the day. Meanwhile, out west, after a census by Bronx Zoo Director William Hornaday reveals that where there were once herds of bison numbering in the millions, the population has plummeted to around 1,000. New York Zoological Society members spring into action, forming a group to lobby the U.S. government raise funds, and send Bronx Zoo bison by train to protected lands created through their efforts. Bison populations are restored as the Society begins its earliest forays into establishing protected areas for imperiled species. The Society's mission begins moving further afield in its third decade. In the Galapagos, New York Aquarium Director Charles Townsend also unites the Society's objectives by sending tortoises to zoos around the world in a groundbreaking effort to save the species from extinction. Tortoises collected by Townsend and their offspring have since been returned to the Galapagos to help repopulate the species. And in the West Indies, Bronx Zoo Curator of Birds William Beebe is establishing the Society's first research stations. Where most biologists of the era were studying specimens in laboratories, Beebe wanted to study wildlife where it lived, forging the path for today's field-based conservation science. Beebe's Department of Tropical Research distinguishes itself with the inclusion of women scientists and artists in a field dominated by men. Although largely uncredited, local people also advance the Department of Tropical Research's ecological explorations. Their efforts open up a new world of wildlife to people around the globe. That new world includes glimpses into unexplored realms. The Department of Tropical Research captures the attention and imagination of audiences everywhere as Beebe descends a record-setting half-mile down in order to bring to light the mysteries and beauty of the deep. Back in New York, the Society turns its attention to inspiring the next generation of conservation leaders. The first Wildlife Education Department is established, and the Children's Zoo connects New York's youngest residents to nature. While the African Plains exhibit breaks new ground in showcasing the ecological relationships between animals and their environments, fostering among visitors a new appreciation for the interconnectedness of the natural world. Riding the wave into the 1950s, the New York Aquarium reopens at its new location, steps from the beach in Coney Island. While on the other side of the ocean, wildlife biologist George Schaller, accompanied by his wife Kay, conducts the first ecological study of mountain gorillas, transforming public perception of this once feared species. Backed by the New York Zoological Society, Schaller and others will have many firsts throughout the 60s and 70s. In this pioneering age of conservation, the Society's impact can now be felt in all geographic regions, with important discoveries and long-term wildlife research studies. With the establishment of the Institute for Research in Animal Behavior, the Society professionalizes its conservation work, giving permanent home at the Bronx Zoo to leading scientists of the day, among them Roger Payne. Payne's recordings of humpback whale song grip the public imagination, becoming the best-selling environmental album in history. The subsequent press generates massive public interest in these intelligent mammals, contributing to the movement to ban commercial whaling. Building upon its conservation successes of the 1960s, the Society leverages its unique ability to inspire public audiences at its New York Aquarium and Bronx Zoo. New exhibits seamlessly recreate species' natural environments and push for greater urgency in their conservation messaging. These changes are led by Bronx Zoo Director William Conway, who revolutionizes not only the Bronx Zoo, but the entire zoo profession. It is no longer enough to demand that the Bronx Zoo be the best. The entire field must adopt a higher standard. Among his innovations are a push for the accreditation of zoos and aquariums and collaborative efforts to conserve vanishing species. The City of New York turns to the Society's expertise once more to assume management of the Central Park, Queens, and Prospect Park zoos. While in the field, local people working in partnership with the Society are increasingly leading on the conservation of their native wildlife and the habitats that sustain them. The New York Zoological Society begins the final decade of the 20th century by renaming itself the Wildlife Conservation Society in order to more precisely reflect the organization's global impact and influence. With long-term programs burgeoning in countries around the world, WCS creates the first ever zoo-based field veterinary program and shows the direct link between wildlife health and the health of humans and the environment. Seeds planted decades earlier are now flowering as an 18-month trek across the Congo Basin ultimately leads to the creation of some of the region's first national parks. While in New York, the Congo Gorilla Forest opens at the Bronx Zoo, the first exhibit whose separate admission cost is solely dedicated to the conservation of its resident species, with more than $15 million raised to date. Subsequent exhibits are now expressly designed with links to the conservation activities of the Society. Visitors can literally walk into the mission through these gateways to conservation. WCS begins the new millennium with landmark research revealing that our impact as a species, our human footprint, now covers 83% of the planet. This challenge is met by focusing on protecting nature's strongholds, the planet's most biologically critical, intact wildernesses. The past decade has seen WCS harness its power as a leader. From successfully protecting 7 species of sharks and rays with our partners, to leading a global commitment to stop the illegal trade in ivory with our 96 Elephants campaign. We continue to lead the zoo and aquarium community from efforts to protect endangered species to building a community of conservation advocates through our Animal Planet series, The Zoo. In the lead up to our 125th anniversary, we connected our birthplace, this city of islands, to the marine life all around us with the opening of Ocean Wonders Sharks, an exhibit separated only by a thin band of sand from the wilderness it serves to protect. Just as there was a recognition of the immense pressures on wildlife and wild places when the Society was created, the time to act boldly is upon us once more. Our 125-year history of success positions us as the key conservation organization to take on the world's current biodiversity and climate crises and inspire millions of people to join us in our efforts. It can be done, and the Wildlife Conservation Society has the roadmap forward. We will protect nature's strongholds, advance nature-based solutions to climate change, bring key species back from the brink, and build a new conservation movement connecting people to nature for this crucial moment in time. WCS stands for Wildlife and Wild Places. This is our history. This is our legacy. This is our future. Stand with us.